Most men don't fall because of women. They fall because of what they project onto women. They don't see her. They see a fantasy, a redeemer, a mother, a muse. She becomes the answer to everything he's afraid to face within himself. And when she pulls away, cheats, tests, or walks out, he collapses. Not because she destroyed him, but because his entire identity was built in her gaze. You call it heartbreak. Jung called it possession. You weren't in love with her. You were in love with your anima. And she was never real. This isn't about women. This is about the feminine inside you that you've never faced. Because as long as she's unconscious, she will control your life. And every woman you meet will become her vessel. So the question is simple. Do you want to keep falling? Or are you finally ready to wake up? Stay. This is the part no one told you. The part that could have saved your father. The part that might still save you. Who is the anima? Carl Jung believed that every man carries within him a hidden figure, a feminine energy deeply rooted in the unconscious. He called this figure the anima. The anima is not a fantasy. She is not a person. She is not even the feminine out there. She is the feminine within. She is the psychic imprint of every emotional, spiritual, and sensual experience you've ever had with women. Your relationship with your mother, your first crush, the cultural images of femininity you consumed, the porn you watched as a teenager, the heartbreaks you never healed from, all of it shapes her. The anima is not whole. She is a patchwork of memory, fantasy, pain, and longing. And because she lives in your unconscious, she doesn't show up as a voice inside your head. She shows up in your choices. She appears in the women you're drawn to, the ones you chase, the ones you can't let go of, even when they hurt you, even when they trigger everything you're trying to escape. She is the reason you fall in love too fast, why you obsess over texts, why you mistake intensity for connection. You don't see the woman, you see your anima projected onto her. She becomes everything you've been missing: nurturing, mysterious, spiritual, alluring. She becomes the hope that you'll finally be seen, finally be loved, finally be whole. But here's the danger. If you don't become conscious of the anima, she becomes a ghost that haunts every relationship you have. You think you're choosing her, but you're not. You're chasing the parts of yourself you've never owned. The anima is powerful because she represents everything you've suppressed: feeling, tenderness, chaos, depth, soul. And when a woman mirrors her back to you, you don't just feel desire, you feel salvation. But what happens when she doesn't live up to your fantasy? What happens when she reveals that she's not the goddess you imagined? You get angry, disappointed, resentful. You blame her. You say she changed. You say she tricked you. But none of that is true. She didn't betray you. Your illusion did. Because it was never about her. It was about you. You wanted her to make you whole. You wanted her to prove you mattered. You wanted her to reflect back the man you're too afraid to become. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. That's turning your soul over to a stranger and begging her to make sense of it. Jung understood this deeply. He said, "What you do not make conscious, you will live out as fate." And that's exactly what most men do. They live out their anima over and over, in woman after woman, not realizing they aren't falling in love. They're falling into possession. If you don't face your anima, you will keep chasing her in others. You will keep projecting your soul onto bodies that cannot carry it. And every time it ends, you will be left more broken than before. Not because of what she did, but because of what you refuse to see. The anima isn't a woman. She is you, the part of you you've never faced, the part of you that still waits to be seen. But she won't save you. She can't, because until you meet her inside, you will never meet a woman clearly again. And until you make her conscious, you will never truly be free. Most men don't fall for kindness. They fall for chaos, not because they like pain, but because chaos feels familiar. It echoes the emotional instability they grew up around, the inconsistent love of a distracted mother, the silent disapproval of a passive father, the confusing messages of culture and romance. She walks in, and something inside you lights up. Not peace, tension. She's beautiful but sharp, alluring but dangerous, affectionate but unpredictable. And that unpredictability hooks you, not because she's playing a game, but because you are still caught in one. The game of proving your worth. She becomes your test. If she stays, it means you made it. If she approves, it means you're finally enough. If she chooses you, it means you matter. But here's the truth. You're not attracted to her. You're addicted to the battle for yourself. Every compliment feels like a drug. Every silent treatment feels like withdrawal. You can't leave, because leaving would mean facing your emptiness. Staying means maybe, just maybe, you'll finally win. And so you stay, you chase, you bend. And here's what no one wants to admit. She didn't manipulate you. You manipulated yourself to be liked, to be chosen, to be good enough. You changed your opinions. You silenced your boundaries. You smiled through discomfort. Why? Because deep down, you didn't feel like a man worth keeping unless someone else told you so. You confused attention for affection. You confused intensity for intimacy. You confused emotional volatility for passion. But it wasn't love. It was limbic hijacking. You weren't connected. You were hooked. And the more unpredictable she became, the more deeply you sank into the spiral. Every withdrawal made you try harder. Every inconsistency made you chase stability. But here's the deepest truth. She is not the problem. She is the mirror. She doesn't destroy you. She reveals what was already broken. What the dark feminine exposes isn't your weakness. It's your dependency, your need for external validation, your unresolved need to be seen, your hunger to be mothered. She activates your unconscious wounds, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Because feminine chaos, at its core, is a test, not of dominance, but of depth. She tests your grounding, your clarity, your ability to hold presence without losing yourself. But instead of presence, you offer performance. Instead of boundaries, you offer begging. Instead of sovereignty, you offer sacrifice. And the result? You collapse. Not because she pushed you, but because you were never standing. The dark feminine isn't a villain. She's an archetype, a force, an invitation to grow, if you can handle it. But most men don't grow. They blame, they spiral, they self-destruct. Not because she's too much, but because they are too little. Not in value, but in awareness. You want her to stop being chaotic? Start being conscious. Because until you do, you will keep being pulled into storms you mistake for oceans. And you will keep drowning, not in her power, but in your refusal to claim your own. Projection is not love. It's fantasy dressed as fate. You don't fall for her. You fall for the parts of you she reflects. your need for approval, your longing for a nurturing mother, your spiritual emptiness, your desperation for salvation. She becomes your symbol of redemption, the answer to your pain, the reason to finally feel alive. You say she's your twin flame, but she's just your mirror. She didn't cast a spell on you. You cast it on yourself. You poured meaning into her presence. You made her your goddess, your muse, your emotional lifeline. And when she pulls away, you crumble. Not because she abandoned you, but because she took your identity with her. She wasn't just a woman to you. She was the proof that you mattered. Her gaze became your self-worth. Her love became your oxygen. Her affection became your meaning. So when she left the altar you built for her, you didn't just feel rejected. You felt erased. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That's not her fault. That's your illusion. You turned her into something she never agreed to be. A parent, a rescuer, a savior. You didn't want a partner. You wanted permission to feel whole. And when she couldn't give you that, you called her cold, distant, cruel. But she was none of those things. She was just a person, flawed, human, real. And that's what you couldn't love, because you weren't ready for the real. You were still addicted to the ideal. The woman who heals without asking, who stays without testing, who gives endlessly and never reflects your own lack. But that woman doesn't exist. She never did. She was the dream of the boy who never felt seen. And you kept chasing her in grown women, hoping they'd give you what you never gave yourself: closure, completion, wholeness. The goddess isn't real. The mirror is. And until you stop worshiping her, until you stop handing her the keys to your soul, you will keep collapsing every time she walks away. You built the altar, you wrote the myth, you gave her the crown, and now it's time to take it back. Not with anger, but with truth. She was never your meaning. She was never your mother. She was never your God. She was your reflection. And when you finally see her clearly, you might finally see yourself too. What she reveals. Every woman you chase while unconscious is a teacher, not because she tries to be, but because your psyche uses her as a mirror. And what does she reveal? One thing. You have not faced yourself. You say you want her. You think you're chasing love, but you're not. You're chasing completion. You're chasing the part of you that you've exiled, the part Jung called the unconscious feminine. She represents everything you were trained to suppress: feeling, vulnerability, emotional chaos, sensuality, creation, depth, intuition. In a society that tells men to be stoic, rational, and detached, those qualities become foreign. And because they're foreign, they become feminine. So what happens? You bury them, and then you seek them out in her. She becomes your only access to the soul you've disowned. When she laughs, you feel joy. When she touches you, you feel alive. When she leaves, you feel empty. Not because she took anything from you, but because you never had it within yourself to begin with. This is what Jung warned against: the danger of projecting your soul onto someone else. The dark feminine is not just a woman who is chaotic or unpredictable. She is the archetype of the emotional, sensual, mysterious energy that lives in your unconscious. When you haven't faced that energy, you chase it externally. And when it shows up in a woman, she becomes everything: the muse, the goddess, the test. But she's not. She's just a vessel for what you've repressed. So when she leaves, you don't just feel loss, you feel soul death. Because in her presence, you felt your inner world again. And now, that world is gone. But here's what Jung would tell you. You didn't lose your soul. You gave it away. You handed it to a stranger and asked her to give it meaning. That's why you fall for the dark feminine. Not because she's evil, but because she awakens what you've been running from, your inner chaos. She is not the cause of your suffering. She is the symbol of your split, the part of you that longs to feel, to surrender, to create, to descend into depth and rise again with power. But you can't do that if your entire identity is built around avoiding those things. So she enters your life like a storm, not to destroy you, to expose you. She reveals what was always missing, your wholeness. And until you reclaim that, until you go inward and meet the feminine you've buried, you will keep chasing her, over and over. And each time she leaves, you will mistake it for betrayal. But it was never betrayal. It was your disintegration. She didn't steal your soul. She showed you that you abandoned it. Now you have to go get it back, not in her. Every woman you chase while unconscious is a teacher, not because she tries to be, but because your psyche uses her as a mirror. And what does she reveal? One thing. You have not faced yourself. You say you want her. You think you're chasing love, but you're not. You're chasing completion. You're chasing the part of you that you've exiled, the part Jung called the unconscious feminine. She represents everything you were trained to suppress: feeling, vulnerability, emotional chaos, sensuality, creation, depth, intuition. In a society that tells men to be stoic, rational, and detached, those qualities become foreign. And because they're foreign, they become feminine. So what happens? You bury them, and then you seek them out in her. She becomes your only access to the soul you've disowned. When she laughs, you feel joy. When she touches you, you feel alive. When she leaves, you feel empty, not because she took anything from you, but because you never had it within yourself to begin with. This is what Jung warned against: the danger of projecting your soul onto someone else. The dark feminine is not just a woman who is chaotic or unpredictable. She is the archetype of the emotional, sensual, mysterious energy that lives in your unconscious. When you haven't faced that energy, you chase it externally. And when it shows up in a woman, she becomes everything: the muse, the goddess, the test. But she's not. She's just a vessel for what you've repressed. So when she leaves, you don't just feel loss. You feel soul death, because in her presence, you felt your inner world again. And now, that world is gone. But here's what Jung would tell you. You didn't lose your soul. You gave it away. You handed it to a stranger and asked her to give it meaning. That's why you fall for the dark feminine. Not because she's evil, but because she awakens what you've been running from, your inner chaos. She is not the cause of your suffering. She is the symbol of your split, the part of you that longs to feel, to surrender, to create, to descend into depth and rise again with power. But you can't do that if your entire identity is built around avoiding those things. So she enters your life like a storm, not to destroy you, to expose you. She reveals what was always missing, your wholeness. And until you reclaim that, until you go inward and meet the feminine you've buried, you will keep chasing her, over and over. And each time she leaves, you will mistake it for betrayal. But it was never betrayal. It was your disintegration. She didn't steal your soul. She showed you that you abandoned it. Now you have to go get it back, not in her bed, not in her eyes, not in her validation, but in your own reflection. This is the path Jung laid out. Withdraw the projection, own the anima, integrate the chaos, and finally become whole. Most men, after being hurt by the feminine, take one of two paths. They either become bitter or they become passive. The bitter ones close their hearts. They harden. They declare war on women, on emotions, on intimacy. They mask their pain with bravado, pretending they're above connection. But underneath, wounds that never healed, rage that never found a voice, grief that never got processed. The passive ones go the other way. They become overly agreeable. They try harder to be liked. They bend, accommodate, and sacrifice themselves, hoping to finally be accepted. They confuse approval for love. They think being chosen will finally make the pain go away. Both are wrong, because both are reactions, and reactions are not strength, they're avoidance. The solution isn't bitterness, and it isn't begging. It's something harder, something deeper, something real. Integration. You have to meet your own anima, the feminine within. You have to stop projecting her onto women you desire. You have to face her directly, sit with her, listen to her, confront what she holds. She is not just a dream, she is a doorway to every part of you you've tried to escape. The part that's afraid to be alone, the part that believes you're unworthy unless you're wanted, the part that still seeks a mother in every woman you meet. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the path of becoming whole. Not perfect, whole. Carl Jung wasn't interested in surface solutions. He didn't offer tips or tricks. He didn't teach you how to be liked. He taught you how to be real. He believed the soul is fragmented when you repress parts of yourself. And the only way to heal is to bring those parts into consciousness, especially the feminine ones, the ones society taught you to avoid, deny, or project. Jung called for the confrontation of your own inner opposites, masculine and feminine, light and shadow, logic and emotion. You don't become whole by cutting out the chaos. You become whole by integrating it. You don't become whole by dominating your feminine. You become whole by honoring her without worshiping her, by facing your own chaos without outsourcing it. The anima isn't your enemy, she's your guide, but only if you stop projecting her outward and begin engaging her inward. This means taking back responsibility, not for what she did, but for what you made her mean. Every time you collapsed in a relationship, it wasn't because of her. It was because you abandoned your center. You gave her the steering wheel of your soul and hoped she'd drive you home. But that was never her job. She was only ever there to reflect what you hadn't owned. And now it's your job to reclaim it. Individuation is a brutal path. It requires facing pain you've suppressed for years. It asks you to die to your false self, the performer, the nice guy, the broken boy seeking healing through affection. But when you do, something new emerges. A man who doesn't chase approval, a man who isn't owned by fantasy, a man who sees the feminine clearly and doesn't collapse in her presence. He doesn't need control, he has clarity, and from clarity comes freedom. The feminine outside no longer threatens him because the feminine inside has been faced, integrated, and honored. That's not weakness, that is sovereignty, and it's the only path forward if you want to stop falling and start rising. Jung warned us, if you don't face your unconscious feminine, she will possess you. You will fall for the same kind of woman, over and over again. You will build your identity in her gaze. You will fall apart when she walks. You will trade your sovereignty for her approval. You will stay a boy in a man's body. You will call it love, but it will be slavery. Unless you choose to wake up, unless you choose to stop, unless you choose to confront the mirror. You were never supposed to worship her. You were supposed to see yourself through her and then return to yourself. She is not your completion. She is your catalyst. She is not the goal. She is the test. And if you're still chasing her to avoid your own emptiness, then she will keep running until you turn inward and finally meet the man inside the mirror. The one who no longer needs to be chosen. The one who no longer begs. The one who's not afraid to walk alone. The sovereign man. The integrated man. The one the feminine respects. Because he no longer seeks her to feel whole. He simply is. If this hit you, don't scroll away. This wasn't content. It was a confrontation. You can go back to your illusions now, or you can take this moment seriously. Subscribe, share, reflect. Not for the algorithm, for the brotherhood, for the man you were meant to be. Because the dark feminine doesn't ruin men. She reveals what's missing in them. And the man who listens becomes the kind of man no woman and no mirror can shake.